I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches live stream number 62. Now, this is a question and answer, art-based question and answer episode. I'm, of course, Clint Curley, illustrator and art educator. I've been doing art education and art studying for nearly 20 years. Full-time illustrator for games such as Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons for the last 10. And I want to give you the chance to be able to toss me some questions. I know that videos can be great and books can be great, but nothing really replaces the ability to just ask a question and get an answer, especially from somebody in the industry, working professional, and that's what I want to give you guys the chance. So if you got something that you think I might be able to help point you in the right direction, then I want to be able to give you the opportunity to get that to me. So if you're in the chat here live, let me move this out of the way, then try to start your comment with the word swatches, and it will flag that for me, and I'll try to answer it during the course of this program. Now, we do have a couple of announcements to go over, and we will get through those. Then I will start taking your questions. So thank you for everybody making the time to join in live. We already have a load of people in here. Esri, Michael, Milos, good to see you guys. Corrido, Julia, Vizonia, Green Blazer, how's it going, everybody? I will go ahead and tell you right off the bat, it's been a long week, and I am not at full energy levels, full mental energy levels. So this will probably be a little chill, but it'll give us. Sorry. Turn my phone off here. But if you want to just kick back and, grab your sketchbook, listen to some ARTalk, or if you want to just, grab a drink and toss me some questions, we'll see what we can do. Okay, let me go through a couple of announcements first. All right. Art Patreon, which is that's not what I meant to hit. My new Patreon, which is my personal art-based one, not Swatches, is patreon.com/ I'm not typing that right at all. My name, Clint Curley. And over there, we've been doing 2 illustrations over this last month for July. And I've just finished up one of them, and the other one is almost ready to be finished. So the one that I finished just this week is this one. I'm calling it Quest. I wasn't sure what to call it. But so that's one that we made, and if you join me over on that Patreon, then you will get kind of behind the scenes look at some of the works in progress, and I'm also recording some videos explaining how I'm going about creating these images, and you will get high-res versions of the images after they get finished. I've only recorded one video so far, so for you guys that are patrons, then know that I will be recording another one, catching you up from the last video through the end of the finished piece, and talking about some of the art techniques that I used and just some of my thoughts about the process and that sort of thing, just giving you a behind the scenes look. And yeah, anyway, that will be coming out pretty soon. The cyberpunk image is close. It's probably about 90% now, 80 or 90% completion. And I will make a video going over some of the things that I, worked on for that as well. Next up, number 2 is the Swatches Patreon. If you want me as your art teacher, the best way to do that is to join me over on Swatches Patreon at patreon.com/swatches. And the subject for, I guess it's not July, August, will be materials. So I have started the preparation of this. I've outlined the subjects that I want to cover. I've taken down my notes. I've created some of the example images, and I will be recording it next week and beginning the editing process of that as well. And if you want to get the video on me explaining how to paint materials, how to understand and think about materials, then join me over on Patreon. You will have the best price to get this as a patron. It will be more expensive if you try to buy this individually. I have gone out and I have watched several videos on this topic that other people have made. I have bought numerous videos that other people have made on this topic. And oh, where's OBS? I should switch over to this for a second. Yeah. None of them approach it the way that I think is the most useful. What I'm seeing is a lot of videos that teach you how to paint this thing. Like, oh, this is how you paint, glass. This is me painting this. You can watch me paint this thing. But none of them teach you what to pay attention to. None of them teach you how to understand the topic of materials, how to approach it so that when you go to any other project or any other subject, you will know how to, how to think about it, how to, really how to approach the subject and know what to do with it. And that's what I'm intending to do. I want you to be able to come away understanding the principles involved on this subject so that you're in a good position to tackle anything going forwards. Next up is the art challenge. The new one, it's already sold out, but the sword and owl challenge, if you want to get in on that just on your own time, then there is a link on the Facebook group, swatches.group, and you can go download the brief for that as well as some inspiration images and have a go and post your stuff out on this Facebook group, and the rest of the guys out there would be happy to help you out with that. Okay, we'll pause there. We might talk about a couple of other things, but I'll pause there and start taking a look at what you guys are saying. Let me run back up here in the chat and see what's going on. Green Blazer says, have you heard of the U-brands colored pencils? And if so, how do I fill in the tooth of the paper and are they soluble? I have not heard of U-brands. Prismacolor are the only color pencils I have much experience with. Those are good color pencils. I don't have any problem with that. I've also used a little bit of the watercolor color pencils, and those are kind of fun because you can work them like a pencil, or you can get just water and dilute them and sort of paint with them. Okay. Question from Esri says, how to improve my skills with values? Ezra also follows it with, my painting style looks like cartoon. I'd love to learn a more painterly style, but just can't. All looks flat. To improve your skills with values, there are a couple of exercises I recommend. One would be 2-tone and 3-tone studies. We can switch back over to the other feed here. There we go. One would be 2- and 3-tone studies. So get a reference image, whether it's a photograph, a decently lit photograph, or maybe a classical painting or classical photographs, and paint it in only 2 tones, white and black. And everything needs to be divided into one or the other. Or do also 3-tone studies, so you have white, gray, and black. And those are really good ways to practice understanding values and understanding how to put things into value ranges and be able to look at an image and instantly recognize the value blocks for each object and be able to group them together in the right way. It also helps you to think about the importance of the overall value scheme. Beyond that, something you can do is look up cast drawings. It's a classic study of getting like a plaster cast of a face. You can buy smaller ones that are just like eyeballs. It's like a plaster cast of an eyeball or a mouth, nose, that sort of thing. and just do a really good graphite drawing of that where you're only working in values, and you will start paying more attention to how to do that properly. There are also some videos out on, I forget which site it is, Udemy or Skillshare. I think there is some drawing courses on doing cast drawings, and that might be something you want to look at. And I think those are reasonably priced. Carlos says, hi, how do you manage to combine hard and soft edge brushes in order to work well together? That's a good question. I don't have a definitive rule on that, but something you can think about is blocking things in with a soft brush. I find that it is harder, and I think it's true for most people, that it's harder to go back in and bring in soft edges after you've been using a more defined edges, approach in your painting. After everything kind of gets defined, it's hard to go back and soften things up properly. So consider blocking them in with a rougher or looser brush, then tighten it up as you go. Something else to think about is approaching edges so that you have a rule of thumb just about what should be or shouldn't be softer. You can base it on a couple of different things. Rounded things that are rounding away or rounding to you, can have a softer edge because you want to give the impression that it's not a planar edge, a hard planar edge. So that's something that you might have a firm edge, but not a hard edge to. Other things as soft edges, anything that you want to convey a physical material softness to, such as fabric, wool, as compared to something that has a hard surface like a phone case, in which case you don't really want a soft edge on that. You can also play around with using depth of field and having the background out of focus. There are ways to do that with Photoshop filters, especially with the blur filter, the lens blur filter. But there is something unique that you can get out of painting it that way. James Gurney does that to great effect with some of his illustrations. So I'd recommend going out to his YouTube channel, James Gurney. I think it's just under James Gurney. And you can see some time lapse of him painting things in depth of field. So a couple of ideas there. Michael asks, that just jumped on me. Hang on. I know I'm a ways behind. I appreciate the load of questions because sometimes I have to kill time in order to get some questions coming in. So this is good. I appreciate it. And a lot of people joining in. Gaming Poo, Hobbit, good to see you again. Anna, Neutral, Will Smith, Swift, good to see you guys. Igor, I'm not sure which way you say it. Igor, probably. Anyway, Michael said, Swatches. I find a hard brush gives me more control, but blending takes a while. And a soft brush is faster as there's no blending, but doesn't give me a lot of control. How do you find that balance? One of the things that I found super useful is the Smudge Tool. With the proper settings, the Smudge Tool can be really effective so that I can paint in my harder edged brush, but I have the ability to blend it very quickly with the smudge brush. And I think that gives you a good amount of balance between the two. Anything else on that topic? Hard time control, but blending takes a while. Soft brush is fast, there's no blending. The other thing is using or creating a brush that has a mixture of both. So maybe it's a brush that has a soft edge on one side, so that you can, as long as you make a brush stroke from one direction, it's always going to be smooth. But if you make a brush stroke from the other direction, you'll have a hard edge. Or using an angular brush so that maybe the top of it is softer. And those sorts of things will give you a little more ability to do hard and soft edges and kind of work it into the flow. Hobbit says, folks, don't forget to add swatches at the beginning of the questions. Okay, so you're talking to them. I just recognized the word when you said that. And mouse doesn't want to move. Hang on. Currido asks, I have a question. I like to combine matte painting and digital painting. Do you think this is a good idea? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about matte painting as far as like realistic background paintings for movies in which, they don't build the scene or they don't build the set, they digitally paint in the background, then yeah, that's almost completely digital now. I don't know that anybody does that traditionally anymore, and it's a super effective way of using photos, and there's a lot of good digital tutorials out there, video tutorials on doing digital matte painting. There's a fella, I saw his video just the other day, I can't remember his name. Anyway, if you look it up, you can find some. Go out to ArtStation, go out to CubeBrush. Either one of those is going to have several options as far as digital matte painting. And that's something that you really need to understand, lighting and what makes things look realistic. But it's a fantastic avenue of art. And it's one that I've actually thought about doing a challenge based on that, doing a legit matte painting challenge where the idea is it should be absolutely seamless, that it looks completely real. And you can use, digital photography mixed in with your painting to create this new scene. If you guys are interested in that being a topic for an upcoming challenge, let me know. And then I will also try to do a video on the topic, kind of showing how to do it beforehand, so everybody has an idea of how to approach that subject. Lewis says, Swatches, hi Clint, big fan of your work. Well, thank you, Lewis. I'm glad you like it. I have a question for you. How do you deal with real photo textures and apply on paintings? Personally, I don't use real photo textures that much. If I'm doing concept art, I will probably use them more because it is just about generating the idea. It's just about conveying the concept. So I don't care if they're photo derived or not. But generally speaking, I don't use them very much. There's nothing inherently wrong with doing it, but it's just not usually the look that I personally want. I like creating things through brushstrokes. I like creating the form and almost sculpting it with color. That's, that sort of creation process. So if I were to use photo textures, sometimes I do it when I just need a brush that has more variance to it than I can really get out of the scatter settings in Photoshop. I know before that I've used photo textures as far as like lightning. I think I got like a lightning brush one time because it could just very quickly give me a lightning arrangement stroke. I've also used one that was cracks, just natural cracks in like rock. And so that sort of thing, I will often, if I use them at all, I will often use them like that so that it will give me a starting point. And I'll usually end up changing it a little bit, but yeah. No, anyway, that's how I approach it. That's kind of the extent that I use them. Neutral says, thank you for what you're doing. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you appreciate it. Have you heard of watercoloring software called Rebel? I have not. I don't. It's the first that I've heard about it. But watercolor is cool, and if they have a software that can do it well, that's awesome. The last time that I looked, the program Painter was doing some really good work with digital watercolor. And I think some of the new programs too, like Procreate or ArtRage, one of those has some good traditional approaches, looks to their work. Okay, Anna says, Swatches, I know there are a ton of tutorials, but I'd love to have yet another one for hair. I hate hair. Could you do one someday? That's a good topic, Anna. And it's actually along the lines of what I'm thinking about doing with the Patreon, Swatches Patreon, going forwards. I want to do some more topical ones like that. I've done a lot of theory-based things like light, composition, colors, but there is certainly a lot of desire for some more specific subjects that people have some difficulty with, and I will probably group them together. I probably won't do like an entire reward on just painting hair. So it might be something like painting hair and eyeballs and hands, and kind of group some of those things together. And yeah, I'll kind of count that up as one one suggestion in that direction. So yes, Anna, thank you. Whoa, yep, it keeps jumping when I try to scroll down. Hang on. Neutral says, Swatches, thank you for your content. You're welcome. Thanks, man. Have you heard of? Oh no, we already looked at that one. Moving up. Hobbit says, Swatches, do you have anything available that you'd recommend for someone studying fundamentals? Well, I would say start with my Art Fundamentals series here on the channel. If you haven't checked those out, there is a playlist for the fundamentals, and they are not necessarily in depth, but they should give you a good idea of what you should study. And what I would recommend is go out and watch those videos and then jot down the topics that I'm talking about so that you can go out and know what to search for to find full videos discussing those specific points. That would be a go-to option. There is also a lot of fundamental drawing series out there. Of course, I am working on creating an art course on that very subject, but that's going to be months out. I cannot work on it full time because I've got to be making money while it's getting done. So I'm only able to throw maybe 20% of my time into it during the week, which means that it's probably going to be another at least 3 to 6 months, probably closer to 6 months before it comes out. And once that's out, then I will recommend that. But aside from that, that's another one where you could probably look at, again, something like Skillshare has some good videos out there on basic drawing, and those could be good options to walk you through that. Will says, I've been spending a lot of time on rendering my paintings, and I want to get towards the 8 to 12 hour range, but always go 20 plus hours. Is there a way to work faster and more effectively? Okay, I talked about this a little bit on the last live stream, and I recognize that a lot of people don't watch all of those because they're 3 hours-ish. So I will go over it a little bit here too. And one of the things I will say is, depending on the type of image that you're painting, 8 to 12 hours is exceptionally fast. If you're doing anything that has like multiple characters, like this piece, let me jump back over if I can grab OBS. Like this piece, we're talking 40 hours plus. I mean, there was a lot of time put into that, and there's just no way around the fact that it's going to take a lot of time. And as much as I know, and as fast as I try to be, when you get to a certain level of detail and complexity, it's just going to take a long time. And certainly when you have to go out and start trying to find a lot of references for things that you don't know how to paint, offhand, then that's going to become a factor as well. Oh, I forget that I can actually have this up on my screen because it's playing the video in the background. That's right, I'm not used to that. Okay, I can just leave OBS right there. So in order to improve your time and be able to work faster, one is, I will say, speed is not the most critical ability for an artist. It's not. And it is more important that you can be able to paint to a, whatever level you're trying to reach. And the very fact that you can do that is the most important thing. The fact that you can do that consistently is the next important thing. And then it kind of goes to whether you can do that very quickly or not. So that's further down the list. Some practices that you might want to try is doing timed. So get something like a still life, or if you're drawing from life, get something like a still life and just some folded fabric or, animal skull or whatever it is, and draw or paint that in 20 minutes. And then take a break, come back and do it again in half that time, and then take a break and come back and do it again in half that time. And what it's going to teach you to do is to focus on the most critical things first. And a lot of the issue with getting faster is just knowing how to prioritize the subjects that you're painting. You're prioritizing the most important things first and establishing them in order, where you get slower when you start putting less important things first, and it slows down the entire process. Something else that can also improve the overall speed of the process is front-loading your work so that you take the time to problem solve as much as you can earlier on in the design stage, in the ideation stage, instead of leaving a lot of things to be finished and answered later down the line. So if you leave a lot of things to be answered later, it might be that you're coming up with problems you should have answered, and you're going to end up having to make changes that take longer to implement because the piece is more detailed at that point. The other thing is what the process that you're using can slow you down. And if you're working, say, black and white to color, then if you can learn how to not do black and white first and immediately jump to color, that can save you some time. So, okay, a couple of things to think about. Hopefully you find that helpful. The Gaming Poo says, what should I do if I can't find time to draw? Another question is how to treat art as a fun thing to do rather than an obligation. What should I do if I can't find time to draw? Generally speaking, people have more time than they think they do. Now, I understand there are some people out there that are like single parents with 2 kids working 2 jobs, and you literally have, like 20 minutes a day that you might be able to draw, and that's pushing it. But most people aren't that way. Most people are just more unfocused with their time than they realize. And I would say the first thing that you want to do is go on what people call information diet. We are used to being overloaded with information in our daily lives in this technological age that we live in. So go on a diet where you're not checking Facebook, you're not checking Reddit, you're not getting on YouTube every day. You're not getting on Facebook every day. You're backing away from all that stuff, or you're just choosing to do it one time a day, and you set how long you're going to do it. You're not reading all the news posts. You're not watching the news every day. If you go on an information diet, one thing is it's going to free up a lot of your time. And the studies show, I mean, you can go look it up. Studies show that we'll spend over an hour a day just kind of splurging time on social media and pointless, video browsing. And that's a really good way to save time. It's also a way to free up mental space and mental energy, and you will have more focus to spend on your drawing. Aside from that, if you don't have as much time to draw, then have a plan about what you're going to do when you do have time. If you are getting to where, okay, now it's time for me to draw, and then you're trying to put together a game plan about what to do, then you're wasting valuable time, and it's a limited resource. So map out what you want your goal to be, and just take, usually Sundays is when I do it. I'll set it have some time Sunday afternoon and just kind of work out what I'm going to get done that week, what my goals are, and it just helps me to focus on what I need to do. So kind of work out, I want to be studying, perspective this week. And that means that I'm going to do drawings on this, and this, or I'm going to watch this video, then I'm going to do, what he talks about on that video. And just make a list, and when you get the chance to draw, immediately start going down that list, or get an art book and start going through the exercises, or sign up for a drawing course, online, or a mentorship, so that you have ready things to immediately jump into, and you're not wasting your time trying to figure it out as you go. How to treat art as something fun rather than obligation. If it is not fun for you, you need to go do something else. The only reason it should really be an obligation is if it is your freaking job. And even then, you need to be able to make it fun. And I don't know that there's much I can tell you about how to make it fun. That is a choice. That is all about attitude and perspective, and you choosing it. It is work. There's no way around the fact that it is work. You are doing some kind of work. But whether you choose to enjoy it or not is entirely up to you. I would suggest go take a look at Brendan Bouchard. His channel, I want to think that he has a video on that topic about how to enjoy your work, or not to be held down by obligation or something like that. I remember him having a video, something on that line. So I'm going to point you over to Brendan Bouchard, and he has a lot of stuff about how to have a better perspective or attitude or ways to look at things and work that you have to do. Okay. Ezra says, Swatches, is the new Swatches content only for $40 tier, or will it be available at the $20 tier? I need those homeworks. Just wondering if they're worth getting feedback yet, $40 tier, or wait after practicing the $20 tier. Oh, okay. We're talking about Swatches Patreon. Will it be available for the $20 tier? The new content, the materials video that will be made, it will be, the main video will go out to the $10, $20, and $40 tier. Now, I will also be making some exercise pages built around the subjects of practicing that topic, and those will be going out to the $20 tier and the $40 tier. The only real difference between the 20 and the 40 is that the 40 also gets the feedback video. Now, the 20 and the 40 also have access to the video library as well, beyond just the $10 tier. So if you want to be able to send me an art piece and me give you feedback on that, then you absolutely have to be at the $40 tier. You're essentially only paying $20 for that, which is super cheap for the 45-minute-ish, 35-minute-ish video that they usually come out being. So that's a really good deal there. If you want to just practice on your own, then the $20 tier is fine. If there is opening on the $40 tier and that is something meaningful to you and you would like to get some feedback, then go for it. That's completely up to you. The $40 tier isn't so much about getting feedback on the homework, but you could certainly do it that way if you wanted to. I've had people just send in the artwork they're working on, but if you would want to send in you completing the homework, we could certainly go over that as well. Gatto says, is it possible to use color to convey depth on the painting? In the right circumstance, yes. It's probably a little less used than. I'm hoping I'm understanding your question correctly. Is it possible to use color to convey depth on the painting? Yes. A lot of things will have atmospheric distance if you have a long shot. You can see out to the horizon. And everything will take on the color of the atmosphere, which during a daylight situation is going to be a kind of a slate blue in most cases, sky blue, somewhere there. And so anything that gets more tinted to that blue is going to have a mental, impression of being further away. There are also times where you can use colors kind of in replacement for value change. So instead of getting darker, you shift to a different color. So you might be able to do it that way as well. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm not sure I fully understood it. Pixel says, do you do daily routine to practice your fundamentals? If so, what do they look like? No, I don't so much anymore. I used to do more of that. I do some little studies, but no, I don't practice my fundamentals that much. Once you learn the fundamentals, then they just kind of become second nature, and you don't usually have to practice them as much. And you start practicing other things. You start practicing like design, and that's something that you need to kind of keep going more often. You start practicing, like if I do exercises, it's usually design exercises, character design, face design, head design, body shape design, and I might do material exercises where I practice doing different kinds of materials. But as far as just fundamental things like basic perspective or shading or colors, not so much. But if that's where you are with your art education, then yes, you should be practicing those. And there is, that is time well spent if that's where you're at and that's what you're learning. Yep. But as you progress, you will start practicing different things. Yep. Hero says, how do I know if I'm ready to start looking for work? Also, what practical advice would you give for searching for freelance work? Okay, Hero, obviously I don't know offhand what your work looks like or if you're ready, but it doesn't really matter. We'll address it just giving you some idea. A rule of thumb is, are you creating work that is equal to what the industry is right now. So say that you want to do work for Blizzard, World of Warcraft, something in that vein, Hearthstone, that sort of thing. Does your work currently look like the same kind of work at the same kind of level that they already have? If so, sure, start looking for work. If it isn't, then keep practicing. So that would be one way to think about it. Another thing to think about is, if you are not really secure in your fundamentals, then no, don't start looking for work. If you are still learning shapes, forms, perspective, basic anatomy, shading, color theory, if you do not know those and those are second nature, you don't need to be looking for work. Also, if you're looking for it, I'm trying to say this the right way. Be ready for the added pressure. Anytime that you start involving money, then it's going to be adding pressure to the situation. If you're not ready for that pressure, don't do it. If you're not ready for that to become the means by which you pay your bills, don't start looking for it, for that transition. But the other thing is, if you're just testing the waters, if you're not trying to jump all the way in, if you're just testing the waters, then go for it. All right? There is something to be said for just learning by doing. And if you're not sure if you're ready or not, try. I mean, maybe you get work, maybe you don't. But I guarantee you, you will learn a lot from doing those sorts of projects, doing any kind of commission work. So give it a shot. Any advice for searching for freelance work? There are a number of sites out there that have job boards, and I would suggest going out and looking for those. ArtStation has one. They have one, I think, over on the Magifex magazine website. There's probably others. I haven't gone out and looked for them. But you can see if there's any jobs out there. The other thing is just start sharing your work around. And if people like your stuff, then they will often contact you. So make sure that you're getting it out. You're keeping your work up to date. Be sharing it on ArtStation, DeviantArt, Instagram, Pinterest, wherever you put your stuff out. So put it out there. Julie says, I'm wondering what you think of Painter Essentials 6, if you have tried it, versus Photoshop. New to drawing with tablet, and it's a lot of fun. Julie, I have not worked with Painter Essentials 6. I worked with Painter 15 years ago. I thought it was a pretty cool program. I've simply been using Photoshop for so long right now that I'm not really looking for something else that kind of does what I want it to do. And there's nothing against the other programs. I'm just used to this one. And I don't think switching it would be gaining me enough to offset the amount of time it would take me to learn it. So give it a shot. If you like it, go for it. Hobbit says, earlier you mentioned that Smudge Tool works well with the right setting. What are those settings? You know what? Let me switch over to Photoshop, and I will show you the settings that I currently use, and you guys can take a look at it. I need to switch over to my desktop, though. Okay, so here we are. Let's just use it on this image. I said that I wanted to blur some of this. Well, I can go over here to the Smudge Tool. Depending on which one you have selected, smudge, blur, and sharpen are all in the same little box. So I picked the smudge tool. Then I have a tool preset that has been saved, 2 of them, but this is the main one that I'm talking about. So I can click on that. Then we can open up the brush palette to see what's going on. First of all, you can see that shape right there that the brush is in. It's not a little circle, it's kind of a jaggy little chalk shape. And it has shape dynamics, so it has size jitter, 48%, minimum diameter for 46%. So just about half, angle jitter to about half, roundness jitter, minimum roundness. Scattering is very important. So 223% scattering on brush pressure with a 1 count. And it also has a spacing of nearly 500%. And then the settings that you want to pay attention to are the ones right up here. This is the strength. How much smudging will it do? 10%. And it will sample all layers, and that's just dependent on what you want to do. I have the background layer here, but I'm going to make a new layer on top of that, and when I smudge, it's going to do this. Now, normally, I don't have that at 10. I'll usually set it down closer to, say, 5, and it gives me a little bit softer. And you can see that if I wanted to come in here and like soften his little tail, then I can just do that. And what that will let me do is, if I have 2 different tones, and I paint that, I can have my hard edge brush, then I can immediately just switch from B for brush to S for smudge, and just run down that line, and immediately blend those together. And then I didn't have to come in here and do all this slow, precise selecting, smudging with all the brush strokes. I can just run through with my smudge tool, and bam, there we go. Jonas DeRoe, the illustrator, concept artist, I think he might do matte paintings. I think he mainly does concept art of environments. He's the one that showed me this one and the settings for this, and it's super useful. So yeah, hopefully that helps you. Okay, trying to go back and figure out where I am with the comments. Becomes says, how the light affect other object? Do you have any exercises to learn this and understand it? Actually, I started reading Light and Colors, but couldn't finish it because I'm not familiar with reading. Oh, no, I need to put that, it's covering up the question. How light affects other objects. Do you have any exercises to learn this? Well, one thing to do is to understand how light works, light behavior. So, I don't really have any. I was trying to see if there's anything brightly colored around here, like red, but I don't see it. But what would happen is, light comes down and it hits something like this little yellow pad. And anything that light hits, it's going to pick up a little of the color from that, and it's going to bounce it and carry it with it. So the light has a natural tint that is slightly yellowish from the lights in here. And it's going to hit this, and it's going to pick up a little extra yellow because that's the color of the pad. And that's going to carry it on. And if there's another object over here, then there is going to now be more yellow hitting this from that bounce light off of this onto my hand. And one of the best ways to see this is just getting a little still life and get something like a little white box or a ball, like a baseball maybe, and put like a little red piece of paper or anything brightly colored next to it, and then watch the light bounce off of the one thing and up on the other thing. And some exercises to do is just to do some basic little paintings, digital or traditional, of still lifes as it is working out that property of the light carrying color from one thing to the other. And it can make a drastic effect on the color of an object. If the objects are very close, there will be a lot of bleed over of the two colors. Some places where you see this commonly is if there's bright sunlight coming down, say I'm outside, it might bounce off of my chest and then bounce back up to hit my chin, underside of my nose, underside of my eyebrows, and it will make those extra warm because it's getting the warmth off of my skin and carrying it back up and kind of multiplying that warmness in that area. So yeah, just understanding that, and those would be basic exercises. I think Gurney's book talks about that and kind of explains that principle. So there we go. Igor says, Swatches, are there any new practices you could recommend that would improve the speed of sketching or painting? For sketching, we talked about this a little bit earlier here in the stream, but other exercises for speed would be doing gesture drawing. If you're doing people, go out to a website that has, photos that you can, I forgot what they call it, like timed figure drawing website. And you Google that, you'll find something. I forget the name of the different sites, but you can set on there, like, give me a 60-second pose and just start sketching it. And you got 60 seconds, draw it. And it'll immediately give you another image, 60 seconds, draw that. And that can be one way to push your speed up a little bit. Other one would be if you are practicing some concept art workflows, that could be using a back to front approach to your painting. You can save time if you paint the background first, and then the next layer, and then the next layer, and next layer. But if you start trying to paint all the layers at the same time, or if you start from front to back, that can slow you down, because then you have to start working with edges on everything. And that will eat up a lot of time. So what a lot of concept art will do is to work like with sky, then the background mountains, then the midground hills, then the foreground elements. And it saves time because they're not having to deal with all the edges through all that. Something else to do with the concept art approach and the workflow is using the lasso tool a lot. Instead of properly drawing things in with line, they don't draw things in with line as much, that they will create a selection with a lasso, then just paint that, like the mountain range in the background, then immediately make a new layer on top of that, do the silhouette of the new shapes, big rocks or buildings or whatever they are, and paint in that. And those things those approaches, those concept art approaches, are built to be very quick and establish a lot very quickly. And there is things that you can learn from those, but they're not always ideal for turning into finished illustrations. So sometimes you do want to have a very refined drawing before you go into it. You want a very accurate drawing before you start your full painting. But if it is about just doing ideation and working through, value schemes, color schemes, and concepts, then those approaches can be a lot faster than necessarily doing a full drawing for each one of them. Ty says, would you consider making a book on facial expressions, kind of like how Disney makes their characters so expressive? Yes, ebook or video on that is on the list. That goes along with the specific subjects that I'm looking to cover in the future on the Patreon. So, like we were talking about earlier, like painting hair, I was thinking about doing one that would be all about facial expressions and possibly throwing in, posture or body expression, hand expressions, and conveying expression through all of those means. So yeah, definitely already thinking about it. Have it listed. Don't know when it would come out, but it will get done at some point. Natalie says, hey Clint, I'm super interested in your mentorship. Could I buy 1 hour so we could talk about values to color work? I always get blocked when I try to apply that, even with the videos about it. Any tips? Yeah, we could absolutely do that. If you want a one-on-one mentorship consultation with me, go out to art-mentor.com. I do have some time opened up over the next 2 weeks on Tuesdays and Wednesdays afternoon, my time. And we could certainly go over that. We could talk through, any kind of problems you're having with it. Maybe we open something in Photoshop and talk about the pros and cons of it, or common mistakes people have with it, anything like that. Yep, definitely could go over that. And that goes to anyone else. If you want one-on-one time with me to go over your artwork or answer your questions, then you can go out to art-mentor.com, schedule some time on the Calendly page, and we will take care of that. Nagutama, yeah, I think that's right, says, what's your favorite thing to draw and paint? My favorite subject, I think, has always been characters, people in some regard. So whether they are, really realistic or more, creative or stylized, or whether they're animals or whether they're aliens, I always just come back to characters. Now, I love doing some environments. I love doing some other subjects, but that's kind of my go-to thing. Squill says, my natural style is cartoon. And this fly, for some reason, is obsessed with flying into my head. Okay. Squill says, my natural style is cartoony. How can I go past that and make more realistic illustrations? Should I focus on shadows, proportions, rendering, or question mark? Yeah, that would be a good approach. Squill, I will tell you, when I was younger, I liked anime. And I don't watch it much anymore, but I drew a lot of stuff in anime style, and it took a while to move away from that into doing things more realistic. So what I would suggest doing is doing a lot of studies from life, or at least from photo reference. If you are drawing things from imagination, you're going to default into a stylized approach. That's what you don't want to do. So now what you want to do is move over so that you have almost all of your work is from reference. And it is not about creating something that's stylized or interpreted. It is about creating a true representation of that subject. So doing still lifes, doing environment studies, doing cinematic still studies from scenes from movies. This is also another one where you could think about doing cast drawings, where it would be a long, very precise, accurate drawing of something, like a cast drawing of a face. And there are some courses out there on doing that. You might think about taking one of those. And what you want to do is seek to understand proper proportions, proper shading, as well as light behavior forms. And one of the biggest things that I see people moving from a stylized cartoon or anime approach and trying to switch into more realistic work is them not properly understanding and building things out of three-dimensional forms. And that's what you want to do. And get your subjects. So in some ways you want to draw exactly what you see, because you want to practice being completely accurate. Another thing what you want to do is practice drawing the basic forms of a thing so that you understand the volumes in play. So get something like a person, a picture of a person posing, and then just draw the forms, however you want to divide those up into cylinders or blocks or cubes or whatever. But just draw the forms, not the actual person as you see them. And that's going to be good practice as well. Whoa, okay, jumped again. Yeah, guys, if you're watching this, if you're enjoying the video, then please throw a like out there on the video. It drastically helps the video get more views. So please throw a like. Also, YouTube loves when you leave comments. So any kind of comment, especially positive ones, just for me. Just say, hey, enjoyed the video, or looking forward to the next episode, whatever it is. Just leave a comment after the video is done, and that really helps boost the importance for the YouTube algorithms. Mighty Havoc says, any tips on the practice drawing on the right side of the brain on creativity? On sheer creativeness, some exercises that you can do is doing, well, you can do, get your piece of paper or your digital pad, either one I suppose works, and close your eyes, make some scribbles, and then open your eyes and figure out what you can turn that scribble into. And you got to be pretty creative on that. Sometimes you'll be like, man, I don't know. I guess it'll be a toucan driving a tractor. And that's what came to mind. It's kind of like looking at the shapes in the clouds, and it's like, what does that cloud look like? And you'll have to do that sort of thing. That can be a good way to practice just kind of creativity. Something else that you can do to practice creativity is getting two different subjects and trying to cross them. So getting a go-to option is a plant and an animal, which is sort of your Pokemon creativity. So get something like a cactus and try to cross it with an animal. What would I get if I crossed a cactus with a turtle? And draw some little cactus turtles and see what you can do with that. And create a couple of different variations of how you could do that. And just have a list and where you're doing that. Another thing that you could do is, I have like the random environment and random character generator sheets where you can just roll a dice and see what you get. And those are good ways to practice creativity. There are some websites out there. There are some apps that you can get on your phone that give you a random prompt of something to draw. Those can be good as well. Yeah, anyway, that's a couple of them. I'll keep moving on. Esri says, awesome, thanks. Just to, I think you meant to close the questions on my end. When do you have plans on opening places for the 40 tier? Yeah, you said close, okay. I'm not planning on opening more spots. I think there's currently 12 slots for the 40 tier, or 8, something like 8 or 12, whatever. I'm not opening up more. It's just whenever somebody leaves, that a spot will become available. It's kind of like a parking lot. If somebody leaves the spot, you can take the spot. But I'm not going to be opening any, and I'm not going to be kicking anybody out to make room. I am also not notified if somebody leaves, so I don't have a waiting list. There's no way for me to know that unless I'm like you and I just go check to see if somebody left or not. So if you're interested, just make it a habit to go out there and look occasionally and see if there's a spot open. The other option is if you do want feedback and you don't have a spot and you don't, or you even have a spot but you want more feedback or the time, whatever, then try scheduling just a half-hour consultation, and you're going to get about the same thing out of that half-hour consultation. Gado says, you got the question right. Thanks for the answer. You're welcome. H. Bruna says, when you already have plenty of jobs as a freelancer, how do you find the time to study or improve? I'm always struggling with my notion of how much knowledge I have or how I should have instead of finding the time, more like how do you approach it? Okay, I think I need to read that again. Hang on. When you already have plenty of jobs as a freelancer, how do you find the time to study to improve? One thing to keep in mind on this is taking time to study in order to improve is not limited to just study time. Even I am constantly improving by doing my normal jobs. One way to think about it is my clients are paying me to study. My work for Magic the Gathering, my work for Dungeons and Dragons, my work for all of these different people are my study. And now, wow, this fly is really obsessed with my head. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind is you start being intentional with your projects, your commissioned projects, so they become part of your study time. They become part of the way that you improve. So there's not just one or the other. They start blending together. The other thing is realizing that growth is very important long term. And that includes every area of your life. Growth in your ability to have other skills, your growth as an entrepreneur, as a businessman is important. So you set a time during the day, you say, I'm going to do my commissioned work up until this time. And then this is when I'm going to start doing growth subjects. That's when I'm going to start exercising. That's when I'm going to do my positive reading, whatever my self-growth educational reading is. This is when I'm going to do my music practice, whatever subjects that you're, taking on. And realizing that these are just as important as your commercial work. And when you start getting those in the right priorities and realizing how important those things are, then it's not as hard to make time for them. Okay, moving down. Let's see. Nagatama says, Swatches, I really like the sci-fi feeling of this illustration. I'm a big fan of your sci-fi. Would you check the Oryx and Crake trilogy? Maybe you get inspired and do fan art. That would be cool. We'll see. Yeah, sometimes I'm looking for some new sci-fi books to read. I don't do much fictional reading of fiction, on a daily basis. I mainly do that when I'm traveling to kill time at, airports and hotels. But if I'm looking for some, I will take a look for those. I need to get a new mouse pad. This mouse pad's getting too dirty, and I can't get a good scroll from it. Okay, scrolling down. Here we go. Ty says there were 2 spots at the $40 tier this morning. Well, there you go. Maybe there's still a couple of spots there if you're interested in going out there and trying to find something. Michael says that just means Swatches is sweet. You can catch more flies with honey than with... Oh, okay. You were actually directing that to me. You were talking to somebody else. So I thank you guys. You're saying some very nice things about me just trying to help out. And yeah, I have been where you are. I've said it before. I remember being a student and... I'm still a student of art. You never stop being a student of art. But I remember when I was actually a student, high school, and I was trying to, get the skills to work professionally. And there just wasn't that much opportunity to ask professionals questions. And I always thought that if I ever got to the point where I could help someone else and I could, do that for someone, that I wanted to. And that's important to me. And I kind of hope that I'm setting a good stage for other people to follow that up. And you guys, as you are improving and as you're continuing with your art journey and you're starting to pick up your work, that you will take the time to kind of pay it forward, as they say, and help out the next generation and direct them the right way. Take the time to answer some questions and be real with them. And I think that's a good way to keep it going. Lewis says, how much time did you take on this illustration? Okay, I'm going to assume that you are talking about the video of the astronaut going on, which I did about 2 years ago on Twitch. How much time did I take on that? Well, that video that you're watching is being played in real time. So... hour 15 minutes so far. And I think I end up spending 4 hours on the stream and then maybe another 2 or 3 off stream. Yeah. And that one ends up using photo bashing quite a lot. And it goes pretty fast because of that. Whereas like the squirrel image takes, I think I put 40 hours-ish in that. And, that one's a lot more complex because the lighting's more complex. And you have multiple figures and you have to work it out multiple figures and there's a lot of stuff to reference. So that took a lot longer. Igor says, any advice on starting an independent freelance practice or personal small business? Questions for Swatches and the people in the chat. Any advice on starting independent or freelance practice? One thing that I will suggest is take the time to go watch some videos on the business side of being a freelance artist. There are some channels out there. I don't remember the names of them offhand. I know that I came across them a while back. And They talk about the business side of art, and those can be worth your time to go check out. Also, make sure that, okay, I'm saying that because no matter how good your art skills are, if you don't know how to run a small business, you're going to fail. I don't care how good you are with drawing the images, if you can't manage a business, you're going to fail. And I think that's where a lot of graphic designers and like web developers, those sorts of people will fail. There's a lot of cycle of people in that industry because a lot of them are really good designers, but they're just terrible at business. And you don't necessarily have to be great at it, but you do have to have a functioning knowledge. Rodney has a good suggestion down here. Check out One Fantastic Week. I was trying to think of the name. That is one of them to go check out. So look at One Fantastic Week. I think they have a Facebook group and a YouTube channel. So go listen to their stuff. If I know here in the U.S., I don't know where you're based, but you'll want to make sure that you have your business money and personal money separate. You have two different bank accounts, that you're doing it very over the board, clearly separated. I know that the U.S. government and the IRS really is really is not kind on you mixing the two of them together. So you want to make sure you do that right. Aside from that, you might take a look at Maria Brophy, Brophy, Maria Brophy. She is the wife to a illustrator, artist out in California. And she has a number of videos, ebooks on the subjects of licensing and agreements, contracts, that sort of thing for artists. So that's a good option there. Other things is written and drawn and drafted. I think it's called Drawn and Drafted. They have templates for licensing agreements, contracts, that sort of thing. And they can be a pretty good resource if you don't have a lot of experience on that side of it. Another thing is, if you're going to start getting into that, then I know I'm talking a lot a bit on the business side. I think you were kind of taking it that direction. I said that and then I forgot where I was going with that comment. Freelance, personal, small business. Take time to think about your different options. And that in this industry, it's getting to where an artist isn't just an artist anymore. They have to be more of an entrepreneur. And the term is you are your brand. Artist, you as the artist are your brand. So you have to think about how to maximize your time and leverage your effort, and that you're not necessarily just going to be making money off of creating a commissioned piece. That you can make money a lot of different ways, and that is really worth thinking about, because I think the industry is moving in that direction. Unless you are, it's kind of like the people that are in a studio have more security in that, they have a place to work, their boss is bringing them work, that sort of thing. But as an independent artist, think about different ways that you can make money. And I've been thinking about doing a video on this topic, and that is, you could do commissioned work, but you can also license work that you created. You're not selling the ownership of it, you're licensing the use of it. and you can make money off of licensing for, DVD covers, CD covers, printed on the tops of journals, printed on pillowcases. I mean, I don't know. Depends what the artwork is. Maria Brophy, which I mentioned a minute ago, her husband does what they call surfer art. It's very colorful, ocean surfing based artwork. And she makes, they do a lot of licensing work. They make more money off of licensing than anything else. And so they license his artwork to be used on surfboards, printed on surfboards, and on, sneakers, and that sort of thing. And that can be a huge direction for your art. And I don't know that anybody really knows what their niche is beforehand, but take the time to explore what it is. See if you can get traction in one area or the other. Maybe you do, my biggest thing with optimizing income as a freelance illustrator is art education. Now, it works out well because I was doing art education before all of this, and I enjoy doing it, and it's just a good way for me to leverage my time to get more out of it. So I can create an illustration, and then I can also make an educational video about it. So maybe I make money off of the commission, and then I also make money off of the video. And James Gurney does the same sort of thing. So he created his own IP. That's another thing to think about. And that's intellectual property. So he created the Dinotopia series of, children's books, beautiful books. And he built kind of a whole, I want to say empire, but a whole property around that. And then he's gone on and taken on art education as well, which is cool because he's a good art teacher as well. And he has his, couple of art books, and he has his art videos. And those are all, good ways to make money as well. And you can think about, are you selling online prints of your artwork? Those, I think, are directions that a lot of people getting in the industry don't take the time to think about. And there is ways to make money at this that are not the direct commissioned income approach. So there you go. A lot of talk on that direction, and maybe you find something in there that gives you a little traction to look into. Joshua says, Swatches, in the earlier stages of studying towards the end goal of being an illustrator, do you think it's better to focus on specific studies of fundamentals like anatomy, perspective, etc.? In the earlier stages of studying, yeah, it is good to study the fundamentals and kind of do specific studies of each. Because what you're wanting to do is keep things as focused as possible, as simple as possible. So if you're doing, say, perspective, you mentioned perspective here. If you're doing perspective studies, then limit it to perspective studies. Don't worry about having to do a character design into the perspective study. Don't worry about having to shade everything in your perspective study. So set aside a time and say, this afternoon, I'm just going to work on perspective. I'm going to do 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. I'm going to look at some, photographs, and I'm going to work out the perspective of how those work. I'm going to get that photograph, and I'm going to create that same scene with a different perspective. Whatever it might be, when you do that, what it allows you to do is focus on that exact goal. And you see the same thing being done in sports a lot. So, like in football, I've used the analogy before, and it's a very fitting analogy. I'll say American football. In American football, when they're practicing, they don't practice football by just playing an entire football game. They practice each individual skill so that each one of them has
their entire focus on it that helps them get the most out of that time. Then when it comes to the time of the game, they put it all together. So they'll go out there and they'll just practice sprints. Then they'll just practice receiving this one kind of pass, this one play. And they'll do that play over and over and over until they don't have to think about it. It's completely second nature. And that's the same sort of approach that we can take on the fundamentals. And once they get down, then you'll start practicing other things. And then what you want to do is create a balance, kind of tacking onto that. What you want to do is create a balance so that you do fundamentals and you do your specific studies of them. Then you'll do a longer piece where you have to get all of that and combine it together. And that's really important. If you're just doing studies, then what you have is a lot of disparate skills. And you're not learning how to connect them together. And you need to do a longer finished piece in order to learn how to tie them all together, how to move perspective into your design, into your shading, into your lighting, into your colors. And so switching between the two is a really good way, and it's going to be the best use of your time and how to improve overall. Ty says, do you use the color wheel or the Swatches palette or both, depending on the stage of the painting? Yeah, I don't usually have the color wheel up there. Sometimes I use the little Swatches palette PSD file that I have, available for free. You can go out there and download that, and I will look at that to help me choose if there's a certain color scheme that I like. At this point, I'll often just look at it and I might spin it around, kind of see some options. Then once I see what I like, I'll just kind of store that in my head. I don't necessarily copy and paste it and, sample off of that. But if that works well for you doing it that direction, then do it that direction. But I do try to think about the color palette, and I think about, is this analogous? Is this complementary? Is this split complementary? Does that follow the mood that I'm going for in the image? Does it need to be harmonious? Does it need to be contrasting? So I do think about those sorts of things, and I try to make decisions on them, whether I create a specific palette to sample from or not. Yep. Solarities says, and thank you for everybody joining in. We've got like 60 people in here, which is awesome. And some really good questions. So again, thank you for making the time to come by. And I know that every question is answering more than just the person who's asking it. I know that there's got to be more people than that who are out here wanting to get that same question answered. Slarty says, have you seen Ristic Studies? It's a very good YouTube channel about MTG art. I highly recommend it. I have not. That is new to me. But there you go. If you other guys want to check that out, Ristic Studies is a MTG art-based YouTube channel. I might have to pull that up now. No, don't know about it. Miru Nico says, how should I start doing studies for efficient improving? Efficient improving, that is a little broad. Can you give me something a little more specific on that question? And I'll try to answer that. Igor says, thanks, Swatches. You're welcome. I think Rodney, I'll look into it. Assume there's a slight difference in how to set things up. Vincevan says, how do I ask a question? Pretty much like that. You just type it in there, make sure you mention Swatches, and it will flag it in orange for me. But that is exactly how you ask a question. I was thinking it might be just for a Patreon or something. No, Vincevan, here on the Q&A live streams like this one, it is for anybody. Anybody that wants to join in live is welcome to toss me a question. Sometimes, I didn't do it this time, but sometimes on the Facebook group before the stream, I will ask for questions. If somebody wants to write me in one who can't join in live. So if you're not on the Facebook group, go out to swatches.group, just www.swatches.group. It'll send you to the Facebook group and ask to join. I'll let you in. And then if that's going on, then you can toss me a question there and I'll try to address it if you're going to be absent for the live stream. Brandon, hey, thanks for joining in, man. A little late, that's fine, that's fine. Basically, learn all the micro skills required to be able to draw, train a lot using purposeful, focused learning with a schedule that suits your brain. Will do the best by making new neuron paths. Vince says, would you be interested in doing a AMA on Reddit, especially on digital painting? Yeah, I'd be open to it, sure. I spend almost no time whatsoever on Reddit. I don't know Reddit very much. I'm familiar with the AMA and what it is. So I might need somebody to explain how that would work or if there's a certain way that you're supposed to do that. But if somebody's willing to answer some of my questions on that and explain that to me, then yes, I'd be open to it, sure. I'm just going to take a bite of my sandwich here. I only got halfway through it before I got started. So, here we go. Okay, so Nico's, how should I start doing studies for efficient improving? And you clarified by saying, like, if I want to start learning anatomy, how should I start studying it properly, maybe even having fun? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to start belching. Well, usually one of the things that you don't want to do, and it's a mistake that a lot of students make that does slow down the overall improvement, is copying what they see. And I want to clarify that sometimes this is good, most of the time this is bad. So with anatomy, what a mistake that a lot of people do is they will get an anatomy image, whether it's a drawing from an anatomy book or whether it's, like a hand from a photograph and they're trying to learn how to draw hands, and they will just copy exactly what they see. You're learning almost nothing from doing that. What that's doing is just you reproducing something. You're not actually understanding it. So what you want to do is translate that somehow. It needs to be translated. So, like if I was going to draw the hand, instead of just drawing the hand, draw the forms of the hand. And then shade those. Or if you're going to be doing anatomy of a person, do gesture drawings. Don't do the full drawing of the person, do a gesture drawing. And do a tonal drawing where you're just doing black tones for the shadows, then the white tones for the body and the lit areas. And you will learn more from doing that. Also, take the time to look up a couple of different ways of practicing that subject. And like I'm talking about, there's several different ways of just doing these anatomy drawings. And those can drastically improve how fast you learn something. Because if you're just sitting there drawing it, people, like I said, will just start drawing it and reproducing what they see, but they're not really learning the subject. And a lot of good exercises out there do what I'm talking about, which is helping you understand and grasp the principles that's going on. So look those up, have a couple of different kinds of exercises on each subject that you want to learn, and start going through and doing different ones and kind of rotating through your options there. And that's naturally going to get you to your answer faster. The other way to improve is do not underestimate feedback, especially from some kind of art teacher or instructor. They will be able to help point things out to you that would take you a lot longer to see. And a good student working with a good teacher can probably half the amount of time that it takes to learn a subject, if not more so. So if you have a good teacher in your area, or if you can get into a course where you can get some feedback, then that is going to greatly increase your efficiency. And say, well, I don't know that I can afford doing that. Yeah, you're making that choice because you think you can't afford it, but you also have to do it realizing that it's costing you time. Can you afford to take twice as long to learn the subjects? What is that worth to you? That's up to you. Michael says, I use a palette that has layers set to multiply that I fill with sampled color. It's good for finding the indirect light color. Are there other artists who do this, and does it have a name? I think I know what you're talking about. And yes, it is a, I want to say it is, I'm trying to think of the word. It's not an exercise, it's a practice, a method. It's probably a method. And where you, usually what I see is like you would paint the thing in the normal flat tones, and then you would create a layer that's set to multiply. And then it has whatever tint that you want. Like if it's a warm light, you're going to have the shadows probably have a blue tint or cool tint. And then you can use and you fill the whole layer with that. And then you can use a mask and paint onto the mask to bring out what's shadow and what's light. And then if you want to change the tones of everything in the shadow, all you have to do is just shift that one multiply layer, the hue of that one multiply layer, instead of repainting all the shadows to a different tone. And yeah, that's a go-to option. Sometimes I use photo filters or the adjustment layer photo filter to do a very same thing or a very similar thing. So does it have a name? It might have a name. There's not one coming off the top of my head. I mean, look around. Maybe somebody has a proper name for it. Irahisa Lopez says, how many artworks did you show on your portfolio to apply to Wizards of the Coast? Oh, I want to think it was about 8. Let me pull up what it was. I know I've shown it before, but it's probably been a while since I've shown it. I'll show you what I sent them. I'll pull it up and switch over to my my screen once I can find it. Where is it? It is not where I thought I put it. I thought it was in there. It is not. So, where else would I have put it? Printing, maybe? No, that's the newer one. Oh, that's the newer one. I have multiple versions that I've created over the years. Man, I don't remember where I put it. I don't know that I have it on this machine. It might be too old. I might not have put it on here. But I created a collage. I can show you kind of what it looked like. Let me, where is OBS? Oh, oops. Did not grab the right thing there. So it looked kind of like this, which is just one image that had a collage of different things on it. Now, these are all magic images, but what I did was I sort of filled each block with some illustration and showed a variety of different subjects, a variety of different lighting situations, and just tried to show them some versatility of what I could do. I didn't have the titles underneath them. This was for a show. I printed off for an MTG show. But yeah, it was along that lines, and that was just a collage style. It was also kind of like, I guess it was more like this one, because I don't think I had dividers between the sections. So it's kind of like that, but I had what of my most up-to-date best artworks variety was. That would be a decent option as far as submitting your portfolio in. You could also do a PDF and have, an image on different pages. And if you wanted to, you could put who they were created for. If they were client work, then you might want to put it on there like, oh, I created this for, Paizo Publishing or, whoever. But if it wasn't created for anybody that they would recognize, then probably just show them the image. They don't really need to know what the point of it was. Okay, and yeah, move that over here. As far as portfolio, if you're going to show your portfolio, I'm going to say 6 to 12 images. 6 to 10 images is probably the right range. Anything less than 6 generally has a feeling of like maybe they don't have that much experience. They don't have a wide enough library of work to fill out a proper portfolio. But if you get over, say, 10 or 12 images, it just sorts can become a little redundant. Like, obviously, they can do the work. There's consistency there. And so that's what you're trying to do. You want to have enough that it shows a little consistency that, yeah, I can repeatedly match this quality. And you also want to have enough that it shows some variety of what you can do. Sorry, a piece of lettuce stuck in my teeth. Let's see, moving. Okay, we've got some more down here. I need to scroll up. Ty says, of all the characters you created from Magic and Legend of the Cryptids, which one got used for the most epic card? Oh, I don't know that much. I don't know that much about Magic. I don't play the game, so I know like the Planeswalkers are generally more epic cards, or I just have to go on the rarity, like whether they're rare or uncommon or common. They have the they're denoted on the card of how their rarity. And generally, the more rare they are, the better they are, or more expensive or more powerful. So all the planeswalkers would automatically be more rare. I was pulling up and looking at some of the images here, but some of them that you think are going to be pretty cool end up being just a really throwaway common card that no one ever talks about and no one cares about. Other ones that you thought were going to be just that throwaway common card end up being a really vital card to this specific deck build, and what was never intended to be a real crucial card of the set is figured out to be like the linchpin of this winning strategy. And so it becomes very popular and everybody knows the image. And you're like, well, shoot, if I'd known it was going to be that popular, I would have put a little more effort into that one. So it goes both ways. It's kind of funny. Yeah. Vince Evans says, how would a person go about contacting you about this potential AMA? We could leave a comment on this video, or you could make a post out on the Facebook group. Shoot me an email. Either one of them, get my attention. Natalie says, was it stressful for you when you organized your very first portfolio? Just found out how stressful it can be, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it. I guess I didn't stress about it that hard. It's kind of one of those ignorance is bliss. Like, I didn't know enough to be stressed. I was just like, no, I'll show them the best that I have, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And I mean, I can't change the facts. So, yeah. I mean, I remember spending a little time thinking about which image to put. Should I put that in there? Should I not put that in there? And it's worth taking a little time to think about it. But it's a point to remember that you don't necessarily just have one portfolio submission, setup, that you should be adapting it depending on the client that you're sending it to. And that should play into the subjects that are important for, if we're talking about gaming, then if that game has a lot, as a science fiction based game, then you want to throw them more images that are science fiction based, that are tech based, and not so many fantasy pieces. But if you're working, trying to get something for a fantasy board game, then yeah, include more fantasy stuff. Also, style-wise, whether it should be more simple or whether it should be more realistic, whether it needs, you need to show them more colorful pieces or more muted atmospheric pieces, depending on what the property is. So, it's completely fine to have multiples, and you could create something like your collage template if you want to use that direction. And you just, you're subbing in and out different pieces depending on who you're sending it to. And your portfolio is also a work in progress, just like your gallery. And it's something that should constantly be being updated. And you're getting in new images and you're replacing old images. So, yeah. Scrolling down. Nose says, What to do if I don't feel like drawing or painting but should? Every time I try drawing, I feel like my mind is scrambled and all I draw is just scribbles circles. A couple of different points about this. And there's actually several factors to go into this. One is health can have a massive effect on your art. And I've talked about it before, and I'll touch on it here because it is relevant. About probably more than that now, 7 years ago or so, I really was dealing with depression a lot. And very lethargic, very, what is the term? Kind of very bad mental health, where I was very negative on myself. I felt had a very bad self-image, and a lot of brain fog. Now, a lot of that was due to gut health. And if you do not know how gut health affects your mood and your brain alertness, you need to go check it out. It is not opinion. It is not pseudoscience. It is science. It is proven science that your gut health, your intestines, your stomach, all of that has a massive effect on your brain and your ability to focus and on your mood. And once I learned that, and a friend helped me get kind of my gut health in order, and I had a huge amount of energy change in my life. Not only physical energy, but mental and emotional energy as well. And I went from just fighting brain fog every single day to having a lot more alertness. So the first thing to do is make sure that you're making effort to prioritize that. Take time to educate yourself. All right, there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of studies out there, there's a lot of legit sources from, very educated doctors and scientists that talk about this subject. Educate yourself, guys. Gut health, mental health, big tie between the two. What people don't realize is that somewhere like 90% of your mood is governed by your gut, not your brain. How you feel, your emotional health and your mental health is largely controlled by your gut. So make sure you got that. If you have more energy emotionally, physically, emotionally, and mentally, then you will get more out of your artwork. So during the time of depression, and I was dealing with that, I'm just fighting that on a daily basis, my art did not improve for about 5 years. It just kind of plateaued. And then when I started feeling better, I started practicing again, like really practicing, really improving. And my work started getting a lot better. And my clients started realizing my work was getting better. And I started getting a lot better projects, bigger projects, better paying projects, more clients. So it had a drastic effect on that. So that's the first thing I'm going to tell you. The next thing is make sure that you're getting plenty of sleep and good sleep. Now, this is something I'm preaching to the choir, as they say, because I am still something I have to put a lot of practice into having a set sleep schedule, and I'm not real good at it, but it is very important. And when you have a good sleep schedule, when you're getting good sleep at night, then you will have more energy. It's probably not the kind of question, it's probably not the kind of answer that you were looking for on your question, but it is one worth talking about, so that's why I bring it up. The other thing is, if you don't have full energy to devote into it, you don't feel like just really diving into a full painting, then have some go-to options like timed exercises like gesture drawing, where you can say, or portrait drawing. I was doing a little bit that the other night. We can go to the website and it will show you, a portrait. You can set for how long the portrait's going to be up there, like a 2-minute sketch, and just say, hey, I'm going to do 20 minutes of quick portraits. And it's easier to jump into doing that if it has a very defined goal for a very defined time limit. But if it has a very ambiguous goal of, I'm just needing to practice art, that's too vague. And you don't have a defined time when you're going to stop, again, that's too vague, and you can't really commit to it. So try putting some time frames on it and specific goals, and having things like specific exercises that you're going to do when you get into it. Moving on. Bruno says, is being stuck in a single style good or bad? I would say being proficient in one style is good. Although practicing other styles is probably good too. But I wouldn't want to try to create an even split between multiple styles. So it might be somewhere on the 80-20 if you were to divide it up. 80% of your time, do something that has a good professional, proficient, that you're very proficient at. Then maybe 10 or 20% of the time, practice other styles. Practice cartooning, practice heavier stylization, something on those lines. And what that will do is it will help force your brain to think about things in a different way, in different patterns, and force you to experiment with different workflows. So as an education, it can be good for you, although you're probably not going to be using multiple styles that much as a professional artist. Okay, I'm trying to scan down through here. Also has more than 5 on gold to me right now. Brandon says, I noticed a recent MTG painting revealed for Throne of Eldrin by Livia Prima that I believe is being called Lady in the Lake. That is very reminiscent of the Naiads. Okay, cool. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't looked at very much of the new MTG art. Honestly, I haven't been out there and looked at it. I've been doing more Dungeons and Dragons artwork lately than Magic, so I haven't been in that pool very much. And also did that book cover a while back, so it's been a while since I've done an MTG piece, actually. It's cool that you did the art for Intangible Virtue. Yeah, I did that. That was one of my early ones. One of my favorite cards also recently got your mood book. There is great info in there. Can't wait to dig more in this weekend, Brandon says. Well, thank you. I'm glad you liked the Intangible Virtue. I thought that came out pretty well. It was a largely environment structure image, and I don't do a lot of those, but it had a lot of mood to it, a lot of atmosphere, and that was fun, and I learned some stuff from that. And yeah, the mood books, put a lot of time into those. I try to cram them full as much useful information as I could. For those that don't know, I have 3 ebooks, PDFs, on how to create mood in your artwork. One is on how to do it through lighting, one is how to do it through colors, and one is how to do it through composition. I might do more in the future on some other subjects, but those are the 3 that I currently have out. You can pick those up on the Swatches Art store, swatchesart.com. We'll send you out there. Natalie says, stolen identity. I use him all the time. One of my best in my deck. Oh, you're talking about the, yeah, which card you used? Yeah, I remember doing him. Sure thing. That was kind of cool. I was really practicing metal on that one. Rodney says, is there a way that you would review or consider reviewing someone's portfolio to give them insight onto whether they should even bother sending it in to let say something like Magic or D&D? Sure. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I could go over with a consultation. Actually, most of my consultations are on the line of people wanting to get feedback on the state of their portfolio and what they should do before they start sending it out. They want to know which are my strongest pieces, what should I do in order to improve some of my pieces before I put them in my portfolio? Am I missing anything that I need to create work for? How many pieces, which kind of clients should I be looking for? So those are things to go over on a consultation, either a 30-minute or an hour, depending on how much you want to go over. Hasias says, thank you for your answer. Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for being involved and making the time to come out here. Vala says, about the WotC portfolio, do you think it is okay to have multiple finishes, like colored pencil, acrylic, more stylized, more realistic? I find myself changing these styles too much. For something like WotC, probably not. What you want to do... Okay, let's talk about a couple of the things going on with that. There is very few people that do traditional work with magic. You've got Chris Ron and you have Therese Nelson. Those are I think Tyler Jacobson does some, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's mostly digital. Ron and Therese Nelson are the ones that really come to mind. Therese is the most mixed media, drawing, acrylic, watercolor, gouache. She uses a variety of things, gold leafing, that sort of thing. But she's about the only one. And you got to realize that one of the things that you could potentially do that would be detrimental to you if you show a variety of styles and medias is it can make it feel like you're floundering and that you don't have an expertise, that you're just kind of taking a shotgun approach of, I'm trying everything and hopefully one of these will work out, where they want to know that you are very reliable. It would be better for them to see that you did 10 great, consistently good images of one media rather than being able to do a bunch of different media in different styles. That isn't something that they need, so it's not something they're going to see necessarily as a benefit. But if you want to show maybe digital, a good digital image, a good traditional image that has something near, some sort of correlation of good styles, then that's an option. I would say that subject matter, lighting, are more important to show variety than media. Travis says, I tried Plexus on your suggestion and a friend who is an ambassador for them, and there was a quick noticeable difference, so thank you so much for that. Well, I'm glad that worked out for you, Travis. What he is talking about is, when I was talking about gut health, my friend who had taken products from a company called Plexus worldwide, and she had got her body more, healthier from that and lost weight from that. And she said, I think this stuff might be able to help you too with what you're going through. And that's what I took in order to help me. Now, they have their main product that they really promote is called Slim, and it's for diabetics and people that want to lose weight. It doesn't do that much for me because I'm neither diabetic nor do I really want to lose weight. But the other ones, the probiotics and the BioCleanse, are the two biggest ones that had a huge impact on me. And if you want to look those up, those are the most important ones for that particular gut health issue. So, BioCleanse and the ProBio. I've taken probiotics from other companies, but I haven't found any of them to give me as good results as that one. So there you go. And that's something also, if you have questions about that, or if you want to talk about depression, if you want to talk about gut health or mental alertness or some of the stuff that I've taken that I would recommend, just toss a question out to me. Leave a comment either here or on the Facebook group or even in the Vibrance group. That's a good place for it too. And I will try to, help you out as best as I can. It's a crappy thing to deal with. Depression, lethargy, bad gut health, mental fog. It's just all really crappy stuff to deal with. And you all would be better artists if you don't have to deal with that. So some of the best things that you can do is not be fighting that, as well as trying to improve your artwork. Sparky says, I'm trying to get into character design for animation. What fundamentals should I mainly be focusing on for character design? Well, Sparky, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I do have a PDF ebook on the subject of character design at the swatchesart.com store. And so I would recommend that. And that would give you a good overview of the subject. And that's a lot of the go-to things. But let's talk about some of the fundamentals involved in character design that you want to pay attention to. One is anatomy. Make sure you understand anatomy. No proper proportions and no exaggerated proportions. Also know how to stylize the body so that, you want your like super bulky, the Hulk sort of body type. Then you want, multiple kinds of like burly guys or overweight or whatever it is, and be able to sketch those with simple forms fairly quickly. Other thing is study historical clothing and styles so that you understand kind of the different patterns of how clothing is made, of how armor is made, because what you want to do is combine the creativity with functionality, right? And you need to be able to understand some of the functionality of how real things work. Like armor, understand how the plates work to allow the human body to, move inside of the armor. Understand how clothing fits around the body. Do some studies on how folds work and the different behavior and patterns of folds. Compression folds and, there's different names for the different kinds of folds. I forget the different names of them. But that's something worth learning as well. So do some studies from life, like, maybe look at an old Spanish conquistador and do some studies from that, and then do variations, like a sci-fi version of the conquistador look, and then do maybe a prehistoric version, and then do a steampunk version. So you get that the realism, kind of the believability, and the recognizability. That's not a word. The recognition from that historical base, and combine it with something new. It's also something where you can practice combining two different things. So it's like a different time period with this recognizable subject. So yeah, a lot of different things to learn there. Oh, I need to scroll up. Hang on. Carito says, how can I study a painting as I work in a slaughterhouse 9 hours a day? Well, it sounds like your whole job thing is really getting in the way of your art studies. So if you could just stop doing that, that would give you a lot more time to focus on your art studies. I'm kidding, of course. Don't just stop your job. How can I study painting as I work in a slaughterhouse 9 hours a day? This is, going back to really what I talked about earlier, which is when you do have time, maybe on the weekend, or whenever your time off is, instead of just jumping into trying to draw, create a game plan so that you're getting the most out of your time and you're following a logical progression. And that will help make more use of your time when you do have it. So say I want to create a new image. I'm just throwing something out there. I don't know what your goals are. Say I want to build a portfolio and I want to have 6 images by the end of the year. Okay, so that's about 1 a month. So I want to create a new finished image every month from now to the end of the year. In order to do that, what do I need to do? Well, I need to do this many concepts. Then out of the concepts, I'm going to refine those. Then I'm going to do, value studies, color studies. I'm going to have to find references. I'm going to go through this many variations. And you just start throwing some numbers to it, and you just mark down the process that you're going to go through and which days you're going to work on what things. So it's like the first week of the month, I'm only going to be working on concepts. That's what I'm doing. And then the second week, I'm doing my studies, my value studies, and my color studies. And the third and the fourth weeks are the weeks where I'm doing the proper painting, and I'm going to start and finish the full painting in those last 2 weeks. And then that could be a sort of outline for what you do going forwards. Also, if you have the chance to listen to some good stuff while you're working, I don't know if that's an option or not, but feeding in some good input while you're working, it's not as good as being able to practice, of course, but it is, it's doing a little bit for you. So listening to some good podcasts, and whether they are something like, listening to some of these videos again, or listening to something like, I always recommend Brendan Bouchard, any kind of self-improvement, education-based stuff, then those are good options. Sparky says, I'm trying to get into character design. Oh, okay, we just looked at that one. I skipped it earlier. Swatches, the bane of painters all around the world is hands. Do you have a great tip for the study of hands? Oh, again, jumps as soon as I try to get to that. Any tips for the study of hands? I guess a couple of things that I keep in mind. Let's switch over to my screen in a Photoshop, and that would be more useful. Now, I do not count myself as a hand expert. I still redraw hands a lot or get reference for them anytime I have to do them with any kind of proficiency. But let me move that out of the way. So with hands, one of the things to keep in mind is the proportions. So I'm kind of like looking down at my hand while I'm doing this. is that the length from, I'm talking about your palm, it's like from here to here, right? And your arm is coming down here. The length from here to here is going to be the same as the fingers. So the fingers are going to go up from there and that sort of thing, and your thumb is going to come around that area, right? So that is a good way to just get the general proportions of the hand. Those are going to be about the same length. And a common mistake that people will make is that maybe they get those proportions right, but they make the fingers like all the same length, which of course that's not true at all. The fingers have huge amount of change in the length of the fingers, and that will change, depending on the person, genetics. And that will alter a little bit, but it's always going to be something in this realm where that the middle fingers, usually the middle fingers or these two are going to be, very close. Something else is thinking about the curvature of the hand. So if we're looking at the palm, we're seeing it kind of from the front. It's doing this sort of thing. And the fingers would be coming off from here. Thumbs over here. That there is a curve, the whole thing indents right there in the palm. So if you were looking at the inside, your palm is doing this concave thing, and then the fingers coming out from here. And that is something to keep in mind. The thumb would be over there in that case. Something else, a little tip that I picked up from some anime tutorial was, and remember that this also is not flat. That's a mistake some people make. That you want to make sure that this has a very similar curve as this. It's usually not quite as pronounced, but it's pretty close. That when you get the fingers, dividing the fingers up, that the fingers, if you can run them back, so that the fingers actually take on that part. They basically thinking of that first knuckle as part of the finger, and you're creating that so that if you're drawing the fingers here, essentially the fingers are creating this, and they're coming from there rather than here. The fingers aren't stuck on the end, they're not sticking on the end, they come out. And there's also a little space between them, right? So don't forget that. Don't forget about the curvature that you're going to have. The joints are all going to align. And these two, a little tip that I've picked up was that basically treating those two as one finger and drawing them so that they're almost always together, as if they're one finger, and then the rest of these are more free-floating. They can bend around, but those two you don't want to separate them off very much unless somebody's doing, like this. All right, they're intentionally spreading hand. But if they're just having their hand resting on something, if they're grabbing something, then think about those as a unit. So, yeah, a couple of things about that. Also, if you're looking at a finger from the side, that you can think of the top of these have a downward curve. It goes up over the joint, down, down. And then you got a little, bump from the fingernail there. And then it rounds on the other side. So it always goes down. The top has a little dip, and the bottom, of course, has the fat on the finger on the underside, and it generally has a little bit of the bump down the other side, the fatty tissue, and then where it's just hanging. That can be good. Thinking about them as I saw somebody's tutorial just the other day where he was talking about thinking of them as not as cylinders, but as basically cubes. And there's something to really be said about that, because the finger is actually very cube-based. And if you were to look at the top of the finger, they're quite flat. The tops are way flatter, and then it's almost like they become more cylindrical on the bottom. So if we were to look at like straight on the finger, let's say we took the end off with the fingernail, and then the top's going to be kind of like that, and then the bottom is going to be more like this. So it's going to be sort of that sort of thing. So anyway, bunch of just little tips on drawing hands, and maybe one of those will help you, I don't know, approach it a little better. Swatches, John Avon, I think, does traditional. Oh, yeah, I think John Avon does do some traditional work. Yeah, there's only a couple of them. Brandon says, does the plexus have to be taken every day? If you've missed a day or more, do you notice? I would say when you're starting out, you definitely want to take it every day. And what you're trying to do is kind of jump start the process. Most people are going to have, like in my case, I had years of, I wouldn't say bad eating, normal American eating, which left my body out of whack. My system was out of balance. And it took a lot of work and a lot of consistency at the beginning to get it going. But nowadays, I don't do it. I don't have to take nearly as much, and I don't have to be nearly as consistent in order to just stay where I'm at. So if I miss a day or two nowadays, not that big a deal. But if I do go a couple of days where I forget, I will start to notice. Just over the last month or two, there's been times where I just find that I notice that I'm more negative. Just mentally, I'm more negative. I have a more negative mental mindset. I don't feel as optimistic or positive about things going on. I don't feel as happy. I don't feel naturally as happy. And I don't have as much energy. And I'll just think, I didn't take that stuff in the last couple of days. And I'll take it, and I'll realize, different change. Oh, if you are looking at the products, the one that I am having I'm really impressed with is Edge. Brandon, if you have not checked out Edge, go get that. That stuff is legit. That one is about brain power. And it works. It is not your 5-hour energy sort of boost. Edge is just the little capsule, and I looked at the ingredients. I don't remember exactly what they are, but it's about giving your brain whatever it needs in order to be more alert. And I tell you what, almost every time I take it, it's right about on the 20-minute mark after I take it that it starts kicking in. And I can tell you almost down to the second when it kicks in. And I'll take it, and it'll be about 20 minutes later, I'm on the computer, I'm working, and I will say to myself, oh, Edge is working now. Because all of a sudden, it feels like I woke up from a good nap. I'm just, things are clear, I'm more awake, I'm more alert, and if you haven't taken that, I'm going to suggest taking that stuff. That is almost like that is a morning thing for me now. I take that with my little chewable probiotic, and it gets me started so I can focus and jump right into my projects. They also came out with a new one recently, Active, which is a like body energy, but I haven't used it. I don't know. I've heard good things about it, but I haven't used it. Natalie's taken off. Well, Natalie, I'm glad you were able to join in, and hopefully some of the questions helped you out a little bit. Swatches, a book on clothing in folds, please. Ty says. Well, Ty, that is also on the list of like specific topics that I want to cover on the Patreon page. So that is on there. I do intend to cover that. I'm covering materials this time. And what I will probably do for, August, probably for September, is I will put a poll out on the page next month for the patrons to decide what topic they want to cover on the next month. And I think I'll toss out some things like expressions, folds, hair, that sort of stuff, and leave it up to you guys. See what you like. Travis, I'm curious to hear Clint's story about this too. I can tell I felt better. Oh, you taking the triplex? Yeah, Plexus has, you can buy the individual stuff, or you can buy like a combo. It's a little cheaper if you get the combo. One of them is called the triplex. That's the main one that I took. It's the main one for the gut health. And it has the probiotics and the BioCleanse and the Slim, which work really good together. Slim is something I saw results from initially a little bit, but then I don't see as much anymore now that I'm in better shape. So I don't take it nearly as often as I do the other ones. I said I ran out a month after the first month supply I had, and the come down from it has been very slow. I'm probably about 2 months off at this point and still feel much better than I did 3 months ago. That's cool, man. I'm glad you're feeling better. I tell you what, the stuff works. It just works. It worked for you. It worked for me. My brother took it. It worked for him. My mom took it. It worked for her. I've got a dozen friends have taken it. It's worked for all of them. Yeah, I'm really impressed with it. That's where I keep taking it. Oh. Henrik says, Clint, you are so better than 2 years ago. I'm not sure in what manner you mean that, but I suppose in any way that is good. We should all be improving. Health-wise, I think I'm probably better than I was 2 years ago, and I'm certainly better on camera, and hopefully I'm better as a teacher nowadays than I used to be. Mamet says, I'll watch this tomorrow, just want to say hi. Well, hi to you, and yeah, it'll be right out there for you to watch, and happy viewing. Alioth Morgan says, I'm trying to speed up my painting process, but my style is very realistic, and without the details, I'm never happy with my paintings. What should I do? Simple answer is get used to spending a lot of time. Yeah. Guys, there was a lot of questions coming in about how to get faster. And my background is falling on me. Hang on. Now this is a photo what do you call it? A fold-out photo backdrop. It's just black and white, and I just toss it up there behind me when I'm doing videos. What was the question? Oh, yeah, I was going to just say, guys, there's a lot of good videos out there on speed painting and time-lapse painting and concept art workflows and that sort of thing. And as cool as they are and as inspirational as they are, I think they have done some disservice to the community by giving the impression that this stuff is all much faster than it really is, or that you should be faster. And that's not necessarily the case. And if you're going to be doing a detailed, realistic illustration, it's going to take a long time. And there isn't really any way around that. And you need to be prepared to just put in the time. Like this scroll image that I showed you. You know, I've been working on this all month. Well, it wasn't the only image. I've got like that one, and then the cyberpunk image, and then starting 2 more commission pieces and doing multiple videos and other stuff. But, you know, I've been working on it off and on over the entire month. And, you know, by this time, I'm kind of tired of it. It hits around that 40 hours on a piece, and I'm just like, okay, I'm finished. I've been staring at this too long. But I also know that that's what it takes. And you can establish a lot in concept art very quickly, but that's just it. You can give the impression of realism very quickly, but if you want refined details, then it's going to take a long time. There's also some things that are much faster to paint than other things. And things like character design is going to really slow down a piece. Whereas if you're just painting maybe a tree or a rock or a landscape, that might not take nearly as long because it's not nearly as, what is the word? Precise, right? You can change it up a lot and it doesn't necessarily look good or bad. It's also where you have to start working out the functionality of things and way things are designed so that they would look like they would work in a real world environment. And that really slows things down. So one of the ways to speed up your entire painting process is by the choices you make right up front about what it is you are painting. And if you're having to design something, if you're having to work out the functionality of something, then those are really going to slow it down. Like I talked about on the last stream, the choice of your lighting and how you set up the lighting situation in your piece can double the amount of time it takes to render that piece and paint it. So those things can have a huge effect on the overall time involvement, and you're just learning how all those factors factor in. Let's see. Why would anyone use it? Depression. I'm talking about capsules. I don't know if that's to me or if you're talking to somebody else. But the stuff that I'm talking about, like the probiotics, they come in capsule form. What those are basically the live enzymes that your stomach needs in order to help break down the food that you eat. And that a lot of the breakdown of the food and the nutrient and the process that goes on is a symbiotic relationship. Your body doesn't do all of that. Most people have, I think it's about 3 pounds of the other little probiotics, these little microorganisms that live in your stomach and your intestines, in order to, maybe not your stomach, probably your intestines, in order to help you break down your food. And there are both good and bad versions of those. Sugary foods feed a lot of the bad ones, and if you get an abundance of those, that will give you really bad results. That can give you breakouts on your skin. That can bring about, brain fog. That can bring about eczema, other stuff like that. And anyway, you want to put in the good ones. Like the BioCleanse helps flush out the bad ones. So you get rid of that. You get rid of the overgrowth of the bad stuff. Then the capsules put in the good ones. And it's like a garden that you want worms in your garden to help oxygenate the soil so that your plants will grow well. Same sort of idea. But it's not just for me, depression was the major thing that it did, but it will also drastically affect your overall mood and your emotional energy, your ability to focus. So I found that I got more useful hours out of the day, and I was able to do more hours of good focus on my work during the day when I got in better health. Just do meth, Igor says. You won't care about improving your art or your energy when you do meth. You'll just care about getting more meth. Well, Igor, that is very poignantly said. Of course, the long-term effects of that are pretty bad, but for a little while, you will feel pretty good. I can't really advocate that use, though. I don't think that's going to get you very far, very well. Sita says, hey, Mr. Curley, sadly missed most of the stream because of work again. Well, Sita, it's going to be recorded. You can catch it up later, and I'm glad you're able to join right now. But you do have a question, it looks like. Okay. I want to create a YouTube channel in the future about sculpting. Any advice about how to make it a success? If I knew that, I would do it myself. While I do have recurrent viewers here on the channel, I don't know that I would call Swatches channel necessarily a success. But okay, I'll give you some of the points that I do know and that I have learned because I've watched a bunch of videos on the topic. One is make quality content. If you don't have quality content, if you don't have stuff people really want to watch, then don't bother. This guy, get a good mic. I don't care how good your video quality is or your video editing or how good the information it is. If you have bad audio, nobody is going to watch it. Nobody is going to listen to it. So invest in a decent camera or webcam if you're going to use a webcam, and get a decent mic. I use a Blue, the company is Blue. It is a Yeti mic. And there's also Snowball mics. This one wasn't, I don't remember how much it was. I think it was around $100. It's well worth the money. So invest in one of those. You might want to have something like a backdrop to put behind you, and consistent content, like putting it up on a regular schedule so people can learn to anticipate it. Remembering to tell people to subscribe to stay up to date. I forget to do that a lot, but that's really important. Making connections with your audience is important. So if somebody leaves a comment, reply to it. If somebody has a question, take the time to answer it. Make sure you go back there and you're trying to connect with your audience and be, resourceful to them. That would be good as well. The titles and thumbnails can make a big difference on posting your videos. That's where clickbait comes in. It's true. It works. You say something is You won't believe these 10 sculpting secrets. People are going to click on it. It seems hypey, it seems clickbaity, and it's not the sort of thing that I like to do, but it's also something that gets a lot of views. It's why people do it. It's why people get millions of views and I get 2,000 views. So yeah, that's part of it. Let's see. Learn to use a decent video editing program if you're going to do video editing. It'll take a little time to learn, but it's worth picking up that sort of thing. So anyway, there's some thoughts. Could you give some advice on good things about lighting a scene? Because it's all about light and focus. Well, I'm going to point you to my PDF on lighting, which I try to break down some of the major points of lighting into just a couple of principles so that you have a way to approach that. Lighting is one, I would say probably the biggest factor in setting a mood for a scene. So if you have a scene, determine what the mood, emotion, or point of the scene is. And once you know that, then that should help direct a lot of the answers to the lighting. And, if you want a scene that is contrasting, like two opposing warring factions going, in the scene, two people fighting, then you might want to have two light sources. And one representing this side, one representing that side. Maybe they have different colors. Whereas if you want a very cohesive, neutral sort of feeling to the scene, you probably want one dominant light source rather than two conflicting light sources. That would be one of it. Another thing would be kind of thinking about it like it was a little diorama, or you're a stage and it was a stage and you're the director, or getting a little model and moving the light around it, play with the light and just kind of see how it affects the scene, doing some variations of it, doing some value studies, lighting studies to see what you like. Yeah. We're running almost nearing 3 hours. I'm going to be wrapping it up here pretty soon. I'll take a couple of more questions, but yeah, it's almost 8 o'clock here already. So a couple more, and then we'll probably wrap it up pretty quick. I'll see if there's any more announcements I need to go over. There is a YouTube channel I came across, and I started watching some of their videos. Art education, and I've really enjoyed them. I will type it in. I don't have it pulled up to just show you. But it is a Japanese channel. If you Google this or look it up on YouTube, you should be able to find it. I typed it in the chat there. Doki Doki Drawing. What I like about it, it is all in Japanese. So as English speaker, I have to read the subtitles, but they're good enough to follow. And what I like about it is they have the amateur/student, and they show him drawing a subject. Like this last time, it was a face, a portrait. And then they have the professional sit down, and then they draw the same thing, and there's kind of a chat between the two, and he's like, oh, that's cool how you decided to, handle it this way, or what tip do you have about doing this? And the one that I really liked, that I've watched, I haven't watched all of them, was the professional manga artist draws the background, environment background. And he showed some of the tips between, how to draw clouds and getting more depth. But the great thing about it is you see the students work first, then you get to be able to compare that to how the professional approaches it. And they're not real long. They're not, like 2-hour videos or something. They're like 20 minutes maybe. So those are pretty cool. Check those out, that channel out, if you haven't already. Justified says, I want to make a strong fantasy portfolio. Oh, yeah, I think I skipped something here. Vince says, people can't tell the difference between a tutorial and inspirational video. Speed up videos with music and commentary are inspirational, but really educational. That's very true. Yes. The thing is, you can learn some by like time-lapse videos like that, but what you're not learning is the thought process that is leading to the decisions that you see, which means that there's going to be very little applicable knowledge that you can glean from it. And I focus on the opposite. I focus on trying to make sure that you understand the idea behind it. I want you to be able to understand the principle that I based my decision on, my decision-making process. Because if you understand that, then you can apply that to anything going forwards. And that's also why I don't show me painting that much, because it's not going to be as useful as you understanding the point. But usually a combination of the two is going to be your best. And the other thing is, if you're talking about educational art channels, it is far easier to make a big channel out of inspirational or entertaining art videos than it is educational videos. I think Jazza does a lot more entertainment videos, or at least he does now. Somebody else, who is it that does a lot of good teaching ones? I know Proco does. Proco has probably one of the biggest educational channels. And I would love to get up there, be something around like, where Proco is with his, but I don't know. I haven't figured out this YouTube thing. Okay, so who's ever non-English name there? I don't know how to read that, but you say, hello, Swatches. Good evening. I'm a 27-year-old guy who is drawing for 1 year by now. Do you think I'm too old, and what would be your advice for breaking into the industry? No, you're not too old. I was actually watching a video on someone talking about that this very morning. And he's like, man, I got these people that are like in the 20s saying, I'm too old to get into the industry. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? So yeah, I'm going to say that too and say, at 27, you've probably got a good, 50 years of your life left. So that is a long time to be able to enjoy something you really like and to do something you really like. It's also a long time to commit to an industry and job that you don't like. So no, you're not too old, but you are maybe behind where some people are. But I'll tell you what, 3 good years of, maybe not even 3, even 2 good years of good focused practice with proper teachers, education is going to do a world of difference for you. So I would say if you're 27, you've been drawing for a year, you're willing to put in 2 to 3 more years of good practice, a lot of time, taking courses, getting mentorships, you'd probably be able to work full-time illustration by, 30. Yeah, somewhere around there. I'm just ballparking these numbers, but that's probably something realistic. Yeah. And what would be your advice for breaking into the industry? The first thing would be to focus on your art. Don't worry about doing professional. Don't worry about trying to get in the industry. The biggest way to get into the industry is having good work. Your work is going to sell itself, right? The industry will always make room for good quality work. And that's got to be your priority. So make sure that you can get to the quality and make sure that you can get consistent at that quality. Then we can talk about how to get into the industry. But if you want to know a little more about that, I do have a video, old video, called Breaking Into the Industry. If you want to go back and look at some of the old videos on the channel, you can check that one out. I do talk about that a bit there. All right, moving down. Brandon. No. What is your first step if you got the fuel of a project? First step, okay, well, a couple of ways to take this, but say that I got a commission in. Like recently I got a new D&D commission in. Of course, I can't tell you what it is, but the first thing I'm going to do is read the brief. And if there's any questions there, I'm going to email my art director and try to get those clarified. I am then going to do some rough sketches and work out the basic composition. I'm also going to make a list of anything that I need to go find references for. Sometimes I will do that before I start my sketches. Sometimes I will start sketching it and I'll have a better idea of what I need sketches of. So I will do it that way. And then I will go gather some resources that will help me pull that off. If there's things that I don't know what they look like, then I'll obviously go find references to that. I will kind of think about what my time frame is, and I will look at my calendar and see what blocks of time I need to set aside on which week or what days in order to get this done on the right time. I also want to make sure that I find not just references for the subject matter, but what kind of maybe style direction that I want to take it. And then I will do my compositional layout studies, or maybe I will do my character studies if I'm creating a new character or need to be familiar with an existing character. Then I will do my once I've figured out a design that I like for the scene, then I will do my studies, like value studies and color studies, and then start my new piece. If you want the full breakdown of that, go pick up the video from the store called Painting Process. And then I show you the 10 steps to go through, just noting down everything that you should be doing at each step, things that you don't want to do at each step, and I show you examples of maybe what things should be looking like and things that you should be doing at each step. Brandon says, geez, I'm much older than 27. Never give up on your dreams. It's true. And realize there's no problem switching industries. I was thinking about this over this last week, that what you want changes as you get older. And that's okay. Not only is that okay, but that's natural. As we age, as we mature, our desires change. Our priorities change. What's important to us changes. Our view of time in life changes, and our views and desires of things change along with it. We are growing creatures. We are ourselves works in progress. And what you wanted 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, doesn't have to be what you want now. Just because you wanted it then doesn't mean you have to want it now. And if it's important to you, if it's meaningful to you now, then go for it. but also be realistic about it, and that it needs to, like, getting into the industry and doing this is realistically going to take you at least a couple of years in order to have the skills to do it professionally. So make sure that you're going in that with a realistic, outset. But yeah. Lewis says, what places do you recommend to apply for doing some art commission jobs? What's the best way to work full-time illustrator? Thanks for this art talk. It's been great. Well, Lewis, I'm glad you like the art talk. And what's the best way to work full-time illustrator? Well, you got two major options. One is doing freelance work, which is what I do. Or you can try to find a job in a studio. And they both have pros and cons. With a studio, you're more likely to have a set salary, and you know how much money you're going to be making next month. You know that paycheck is coming. And gotta clear this window off of mine. Yeah, there we go. It also has you working with other people. And if you don't like working by yourself all the time, that's going to be important. Also, you're more likely to have things like, medical coverage offered through the company, that sort of thing. So that could be very important for you, especially if you have a family. And that's one option. If you are working freelance, then looking for job boards is a good way to do it. Also, look for trying to get some input or make connections through events like Comic-Cons, Fantasy Cons, game conventions, entertainment, like gaming entertainment conventions. I was talking to an artist over the last, week or two, and they were saying, like, for the first 3 years of his freelance art career, not even just freelance, he worked in the studio some as well. For the first 3 years or so of working as a full-time illustrator, every job he got was through or based on or somehow connected with people that he met through conventions. So that can be a really big place in order to get your foot in the door in the industry. So maybe you go to a big gaming convention where it's, board game makers, card game makers, maybe video game makers, and you go up there and just say, hey, I'm an illustrator. I'm familiar with some of your games. I'd love opportunity to talk about possibly doing some work with you. Would it be possible for me to, make an appointment to talk to somebody in the company? Or if there's an art director here that would mind taking the time, a couple of minutes to take a look at my portfolio, whether he would be interested in, bringing me on for some work, or if maybe he could give me some feedback. There's a lot of those sorts of opportunities in those events. So take a look to see if there's any game conventions, art conventions, anime conventions, comic conventions, and see about, going out there and seeing what connections you can make. Orlandus says, question, Clint, should I keep pursuing art if it makes me miserable to do it, but the prospect of one day making a living from it sounds so cool? Probably. If you're miserable doing art, making a living from it is not going to make it any cooler. It's just not. Because when you start doing it for a living, you're going to be putting more stress on you. When I've said it before, when the realization that your ability to draw well today is directly linked to your ability to eat next week, that pressure does not make the painting process more fun. It makes it more stressful. So you need to be able to enjoy it, or you need to go find something else. Now, my impression from that question is that you are more interested in the kind of acclaim that being a professional artist brings rather than the art itself. So I think you're probably in the wrong job. There are other things that are much more straightforward to make money with, and it is something that can be a lot of fun if you choose it to be. So I'm going to just push you to figure out why it makes you miserable, and that you probably have a bad attitude or perspective on it in some way, because I know it can be a lot of fun, and I know it's a lot of fun for a lot of people, and being able to do it for a living doesn't change the core of what it is. So, yeah. The Asian, I assume it's an Asian name, says, I was a programmer, but I hate programming. I graduated in the area because my family wanted, said it was good money, but art and illustration is my dream and fire. Right now I'm freelancing in Fiverr, making $1. I'm on an art course and have a mentor, as you said, but I'm aiming to further prepare myself. Man, it sounds like you're really making a lot of effort there, and I applaud that. It is a difficult thing to be working in one field and trying to switch over and learn an entirely new skill set and apply yourself in that. I was in graphic design for years and was working that full time while trying to, improve my skills and build a portfolio. So I know where you're coming from. And I got to where I really kind of loathed doing graphic design. It just was not enjoyable for me. I didn't enjoy working with a lot of the clients and a lot of that aspect. So I applaud you, and I hope you can. And don't think bad of your family. All right, the first thing a lot of families want to know is that you're just taken care of. Right? They want to know that you have a skill set, and that you can support yourself, and that you can make decent money. And it's completely fine that you learned one thing and now you're switching over to something else. In fact, it can be good because now you have less pressure. You can earn money on one thing while taking the time necessary to learn art properly before there's a lot of pressure on that as well. Pankaka says, you're saying the truth about changing careers. Don't give up with this project of art teaching. No, I'm not. I don't have any intention of giving up on the art teaching. I've been doing that for, what am I, 36 now? I've been teaching art since I was 16. I started teaching art to other kids when I was about 16. So 20 years now. My goodness. Yeah, I love it. I'll keep doing it. I just want to, as with my own art and my own art skills, I want to keep moving up in my art education as well. And I have more goals of growing Swatches, and it's what it can accomplish. And I want it to keep going as well. Actually, I think my background video of the astronaut painting is almost ready to conclude, because the video doesn't show the entire painting process, because I ended up stopping the video and then I came back to it a couple of days later. So you actually won't see the it's that side. You won't see the finished astronaut painting in this stream. Uh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna take. I'll take 3 more questions. Whatever the next 3 questions are, I'll take those, and then we're gonna wrap it up because it's 8:15. That'll take us to about 8:30. I think that's good. So. What is this name? Nat Lazia Rap. I don't know where you came up with that, but okay. All right. I thought about personal, how to fuel. Thanks for your answer, but thanks for the tutorials, Tuts. Do you do traditional art like Sid? If you've ever tried any material things, Prof Vise? What do you mean by Prof Vise? Professional something? Clarify that for me if you would. Yeah, I was trained in traditional media before I got into digital. So I did. Okay, the video is starting over. There you go. It's like at some point I can't remember if it was set to loop or not. But anyway, the astronaut video is starting over now. Yeah, I was trained with charcoal, pastels, colored pencil, watercolor. I did all of that before I got into digital painting. And I still do a little bit. I got into a little bit. I don't do it for commercial pieces right now because I'm too slow. But I just got into that recently. I got my oil paints back out, got some acrylic paints back out. And I've been getting some of my magic proof cards that have a blank back and doing some little paintings on those. So it's just limbering me up and getting me back into it. And next month, it's end of July. So it'll be August. In August, I'm going to be doing a painting. And that's going to be going up for sale. So this was me kind of warming up on the cards before I jump over to the big painting. And it is one of those things that it takes a while to jump into. You got to work off some of the rust, at least for me. If I haven't painted in a long time, for me, it's like I haven't painted in a couple of years, then yeah, I need to do a couple before I really get into it. And I don't have to think about the physical part of what I'm doing as much. Vince Vin says, I started university at 36, became art teacher at 40. It's never too late. Absolutely, man. Guys, all of you guys out there that got into one field or studying one thing, but you know inside that this is what you care about, this is what you find meaningful, then yeah, do it. Go for it. There is a lot of people, if you look it up, there's a lot of people that are very successful in a variety of fields that didn't get into it or switch until they were much later in their life. And it's not always a negative because you're bringing into it a lot of the lessons that you learned in other fields, and that can actually give you an advantage in some ways. You're bringing in a maturity to it that other people won't. So there's a whole group of artists, say, that are trying to get into the industry, but a big part of them are young, out of high school, out of university. They don't have much experience at life. They don't have much experience running a business or any at all. But you're coming in from it. Yeah, you're older, and you're at the same skill level in art, but you're not in the same level in life and in experience. You know how to run a household, you know how to run a business, you know how to handle taxes, you know how to work with clients. And so some of those non-art skills get transferred, and that's really going to help you stand out. So don't think that none of it's transferring over. A lot of it actually can. And that can be a real deciding factor between you and the newbie guys. that the out of school guys that don't have much experience. Okay, that was question 1. Next one, we've got would a 40-year-old get a job in the industry? Nar asked that. As far as I can tell, the industry doesn't much care how old you are. And in most cases, the clients, you don't meet your clients. Like, I rarely ever meet any of my clients face to face. They don't care my gender. They don't care anything about what I look like, how old I am, or where I live. They care about, if they send me an email and it has the description, a month later, am I going to send them a cool piece of artwork? That's what they care about. So I don't think age is much of a factor. And I don't think gender is much of a factor. Religion, beliefs isn't much of a factor. Even your location isn't much of a factor, because so much of this, at least for a freelance artist, so much of this is I'm going to say I cannot think of the word. Not on site. You're not working in studio with them. As a freelance artist, you're not working in studio with them. So remotely, everybody's working remotely, so it doesn't matter in that much. That was number 2. Last one we're going to take on is I'm currently multi-million transferring. I don't know. Okay, let me read. I don't know if this is a question or a comment. I'm currently a multimedia designer. I want to transition in video game art by changing school. I'm currently self-taught. I'm afraid I can't find an illustration job after graduation. I don't know if that. I'm probably going to butcher this name. Ryuji says, I'm currently a multimedia designer and I want to transition into a video game art by changing school. I'm currently self-taught, but afraid that I can't find an illustration job after graduation. That is a legit worry. Well, not worry, concern. Sure. I will say, I'll be straight with you. There's a lot of people that come out of art school who cannot make a living at art, because the things that you get taught in most art schools are not sufficient to make a living at. They teach you about a lot of things that are not skills for making a living. They will teach you about a lot of theory. They'll teach you about a lot of art history. They'll teach you about all this stuff that won't get you work to live from. I have a variety of students on Patreon and in consultations who have got out of art school, and they're coming to me and they're saying, Clint, I spent 3 years in this art school and I can't get a job because I don't feel like they taught me anything. And I've watched your videos and I've learned more from your free YouTube videos than I ever learned in school. So if you are switching your education, I'm going to encourage you to at least look at alternate art education options besides a traditional college or university or even art school. There are exceptions. There are good art schools out there. There are exceptions. Most of them are very expensive. And this isn't an industry. I think the average, what did I read? The Rhode Island School of Design, which is one of the best art education schools out there, is more expensive than Harvard Law School. It is cheaper to go to Harvard Law School than to go to this art school. The problem is, even though you get the skills necessary to make a living at it, the average income for an illustrator, I think, is supposed to be between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. And that school is going to rack you up, I think, $400,000, the Rhode Island School of Design. So you can see that it's not balanced. And I'm going to suggest looking at more kind of guerrilla tactics for your art education, if this is something you want to switch into. Go look up, I've recommended it before. I'm going to recommend, what's his name? Was it Tyler Jacobson? It was the guy that made the blog post. IMHO. If you Google this, you should be able to find it. His name escapes me off the bat. Yeah, 400K. I'm not kidding. He talks about it in his article. You know what? Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Let me try to pull it up, and I'll show you guys. I will Google it, and then I can put the address. Noah Bradley. Yeah, Noah Bradley. He's another magic artist illustrator. And here we go. Let me switch over to this, and I will show you. I'm going to screen webcam. Yeah, okay. So this is an article that fellow illustrator Noah Bradley wrote. There he is right here. This is the address, medium.com, IMHO, don't go to art school. You can Google that, you can find it. And I agree. Okay, it wasn't 400,000, it was 245,000. So wildly off on that, but there you go. So I agree with most everything he's saying here. So take the time and go read this. Like, this is what it's saying. The Rhode Island School of Design is $245,000 for a full. Oh, I just moved my camera. Oops. Harvard Law School is like $10,000 cheaper. The problem is, you will end up. This is where 400 came to mind. You will end up spending $400,000 to pay off the tuition plus the debt, accumulation from it over the years. And because you're not making that much, you're going to be averaging what, 40, 50 grand as an illustrator? So he recommends some of these other options. Like if you were going to look at some art schools, Watts Atelier, Los Angeles Academy of Figurative Arts, Safe House Atelier. I know there are a variety of really, really good artists that come out of all of those. If you have to look for one, if you're going to choose one, choose a good one like one of those. But if you want to do a little cheaper, if you were going to put $10,000 into your art education, you can have a heck of an education for that much money. This is where he works out what he would suggest as far as how to spend that much money. And it's going to be far cheaper than any college or university. And you should be able to get a full living level of skills off of this. You should be able to make a living from the skills that you can pick up from doing all of this. And this is a little old. He wrote this a couple of years ago anyway. Yeah, 2013. So this is 6 years old. There were probably some little changes that you might make to this overall list. There are some new courses available now. There's maybe some of these courses that aren't available anymore. I don't know. I haven't double checked them lately, but that's a good option. And so, go read that and look into some of those options. And that would be my best direction for you on that subject. Jump back over here so I can see the channel. Oh, I keep grabbing the video. Here we go. And jump it back over. Yeah, FZD. If you haven't looked up FZD's videos, he's got some free videos out on the YouTube channel. And just the letters FZD, well, you can find it. And he has an art school as well. If you like what you see in his videos, consider, getting into one of his programs. And that's a good option as well. I'm trying to move forwards with that direction. Like what I'm talking about, I want to do more art courses because I think there's definitely room for that. And the industry is moving that way. There's a lot of people that are interested in not just standalone videos like how to paint hair, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I think there's a lot of people interested in more comprehensive education options. So, yeah. Okay. Well, that was the last question. We're running like 3.5 hours here. It was a pretty chill stream, but I think there was a lot of good questions you guys tossed in, and I really enjoyed doing this with you. Now I'm going to just get on to enjoying my Friday night. I'll probably just kick back. I don't know, watch a show, doing some sketching. I'm not sure. Tomorrow I think I'm going to go do some hiking. There's supposed to be some waterfalls on a hiking trail about an hour from here, and I'm going to go check that out. And if you guys, make sure you don't stay behind your desk too long. Get out there and do some moving around. Do some new stuff, go see some new things. Yeah, I didn't do a new Vibrance episode today. It's kind of what I said. I just got to the end of this week and I was tired. And I haven't actually done that much today. My brain was pretty well tapped for doing any new creative stuff. But yeah, I do. I'm not giving up on Vibrance. I just... my brain was tapped. So next week, make sure you're joining in. The live stream next week will be on the concepts and sketches submissions for the Sword and Owl Challenge, where you're creating the Kinslayer sword, the Ice Blade, and the Odru, Lord of the Owls images. And we'll, of course, be breaking down those images, discussing their strengths and weaknesses. And, join in if you want to toss in a question or just watch it live and talk with everyone else. And let's see, if you're not part of the community, make sure you're joining out on the Facebook groups. We have the Swatches group, which is all about the art skills, and the Vibrance group, which is about the habits, health, mental attitude, all the kind of inner games and stuff with that, not the outer skills. So thank you very much for everybody. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I know that I have. Until I see you next time, keep drawing.